Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to tell you about the best books I've read so far here in 2019. Even though I'm making this video and it's actually August, I'm only including books from January all the way until June, since that was like kind of 6 months. At the time, I think I read about 60 books because right now here in August, I'm closer to almost 80 books. And so I'm going to tell you about my favorite 10 that I read for the first part of the year. And these are going to be thrillers and also some romance in there as well, because I learned that I do enjoy reading romance. These aren't going to be in any particular order. I'm just going to kind of just go into whatever I wrote down because I like chicken scratched it in my reading journal. So we're going to start out with No Exit by Taylor Adams. I really loved this story, and it was the perfect type of story to read in the wintertime because it's all about like snow and a blizzard in Colorado. It's pretty crazy. But this is about a college student who is driving home, I believe, for like, I don't know, the holidays, and she is driving over like a Colorado mountain, and she ends up getting stuck in this blizzard and has to stop at this rest area where there's a couple other people that are kind of like stranded there as well. And when she's walking past the back of this van, she sees that there is this actual abducted girl in the back of this van, and there's only like 5 other people at this rest stop. So of course she's in this rest stop like with a child abductor and has to just figure out like, you know, what do you do in that situation? It's really crazy. It's filled with so much anxiety, which I love in a good thriller. It has some great twists and turns. The ending shocked me so much. I had to like read it again because I thought it said one thing and it didn't, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy nuts. It's a really good thriller, and I wish that there were more books like that one. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Other Woman by Sandy Jones. This was the first book that I read by Sandy Jones, and I really liked it. It was a domestic thriller about this lady who was about to get, or she was engaged and about to get married to her like boyfriend, husband, fiance, whatever he is. And she realizes that like his mom literally hates her. Like his mom is like so mean to her and is doing all of these crazy things. And, you know, you just kind of are reading about the story. And then of course, like, you know, the big twist at the end is whether or not the mother-in-law is literally trying to kill this lady. So it's just really crazy because there's just all of these lies, and you're sitting there and you're reading this and you're like, oh my gosh, this mother-in-law is like literally the devil. So crazy. I really enjoyed this book. It's just a really easy read, even for an adult thriller. So I just recommend it to anybody that, you know, loves that type of thriller. The next book I'm going to talk about is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. And this is a forbidden romance, which I found out this year that I do love forbidden romances. This is about a girl who is like about 18, and she starts falling in love or dating her boyfriend's father, who's 38 years old. And I know it sounds like icky and stuff, but it's actually not. This book was written so beautifully. The relationship is so beautiful. It's not one of those like smutty forbidden romance books. It's legit one of my favorite romances I've ever read, and I absolutely love it. And I fell in love with the characters so much, and I just really believe that everyone should read this book. Even if you think you might not like a forbidden romance, it's like the love is actually there, and it has just like the best ending ever, and I just love it. The next 3 books I'm going to talk about are actually all Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. This was the first year that I actually read a Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and I like binged through her books so much. I read One True Loves, After I Do, and Maybe in Another Life, and they have become some of my all-time favorite romance books, along with like Colleen Hoover, of course. But I didn't read any Colleen Hoover books like in the beginning part of this year that I like loved. So we're going with Taylor Jenkins Reid's as like my favorite romance author of this year. One True Loves is about this lady who just got married. I think they were celebrating their 1-year anniversary, and her husband had to go away on like a business trip and ends up not coming back from like an airplane crash or helicopter crash. So she believes that he's dead, and she goes on, obviously she's like grieves for so long, and oh my gosh, reading about the grief in this book was like giving me tears. It was amazing how well it was written. And then after she gets over her grief, she meets this new guy and gets engaged to this new guy, and then her husband calls her, like her original husband calls her and is like, I'm back. I didn't die. I survived on this island for like 3 years. Oh my gosh, it blows your mind because you don't know who you should be rooting for, because it's not like it's anybody's fault. I loved this story so much. It's such an original story. It is so great, and I highly suggest everybody read it. After I Do is another novel by her, and I really enjoyed After I Do because it's actually written about a married couple, and I feel like not a lot of romance books are written about a married couple, so it is kind of hard to relate to them sometimes, especially if it's like teenagers. But this one was amazing because it really talked about how hard marriage can be, and it really showed, like, it had like even fighting scenes and arguments and stuff that I felt like I could relate to. And so it's definitely not a book that's going to like be like, oh, a happy read. It's definitely something that you need to read if you're in the correct mindset for it. And this one is about just this married couple that feels like they've been growing apart, and so they decide, instead of just getting divorced right away, they decide to separate for 1 year, and they're not allowed to contact each other at all for that year. They're allowed to like date other people, but they absolutely cannot like see or contact each other. It's amazing. I really, really loved everything about it, and I really think that everyone, again, should read it because Taylor Jenkins Reid is just so good at, you know, writing and making people feel, you know, for her characters. And I really, really enjoy it. The last book that I read that I really enjoyed of Taylor's was Maybe in Another Life. And this is really cool because it also has like the alternate reality type of trope. And I love that trope so much. So this is about a girl who has this one decision, and the book splits off into showing you her life if she had chosen this one decision, and then showing what her life would look like if she had chosen the other decision. So it really just makes you think about all of the kind of like paths you have to cross in your life and forks in the road that you have to decide what to take. And just like maybe your life could be different, but that doesn't mean that a different life was going to be a bad thing. And so again, you fall in love with like these two male characters because, you know, it's showing who she falls in love with in one life and who she falls in love with another life. And oh my gosh, it is so crazy. I definitely would think of rereading this book all over again because it was just that good, and I loved the story. It gave me such like happy feel-good feelings. It was, I love it. I love it. What can I say? Another favorite I read this year was I Can Be a Better You by Taryn Fisher. This is a thriller novel, and I found that I really only enjoy Taryn's thriller novels. I don't enjoy her romance novels because it's a whole different writing style, but this was a really good thriller. It's one of the best ones that I've read in a really long time. And what I liked about it is because she breaks this thriller up into 3 different parts, and each part is a different point of view. And so I like that the point of views weren't flip-flopped every single chapter. It was, you read, you know, this whole entire story from one person's point of view, and then you read the next part of the story from a different person's point of view, and then so on and so forth. This book, I feel like everyone was just psycho crazy in this book. Like, you do not know if all of the people are unreliable narrators or just how this goes. And so that's what I really, really loved about it. It wasn't a thriller book that really had a bunch of like these crazy like twists and turns. It was just reading about these psycho people. This book is about this lady who had lost her child in a miscarriage and believes that the soul of this lost child is in this other lady's daughter. So she's really crazy and decides to buy the house next door to this lady and her husband and her daughter, and starts becoming like really good friends with them. So much more stuff happens. Like, I can't even tell you everything that happens because you're literally just gonna be reading this and you're like, what? Oh my gosh. It's a great one. Another one of my favorites this year was Never Have I Ever by Joshua Jackson. And I know a lot of you have heard me like be raving about this book because it really gave me vibes of Big Little Lies. And that's one of my favorite books that I've read. And it's a domestic thriller that involves a like book club friend group, and I really just love like books that have like friend groups and lies and all that type of stuff. How the book starts out is this group of friends or ladies, you know, next door neighbors and stuff, are in this one lady's basement. They're all talking about book club, they're drinking a little bit. This new neighbor shows up, and she's like the popular cool neighbor that everyone wants to be like, but no one wants to admit it. And she starts playing this game, or getting everyone to play this game, Never Have I Ever, and admit to everyone all of their dirtiest secrets. And the main character and narrator of this book thinks that this lady knows her dirtiest secret. And so there goes into a whole bunch of like blackmailing later in the book, all of these lies, all of these, you know, previous stories that we find out about, and it's a really amazingly written thriller. I loved every single second of it. It's definitely one of those adult thrillers where you do have to like pay more attention to the details and definitely like sit and read this book, but I did not think that there were any boring parts, and I absolutely loved it. Another one of my favorite romances this year was Lost in Me by Lexi Ryan, and I actually did not think that I was going to love this book so much. It was just a NetGalley read that I had, I think it was a Read Now that I saw, and I was like, oh, this is a romance about a girl with amnesia, because who doesn't love that trope? Me. I love that trope so much. This is about this girl that wakes up from being in a coma, I believe, and she does not remember the last year of her life, but her life is like everything that she ever wanted it to be. Like, she wakes up, she's in this skinny body, she has the business that she always wanted because she's like a baker, she has like a ring on her finger, and she realized she's getting married to like the guy that she always had a crush on. And so, you know, she wakes up and she's just like, wow, like my life is literally a fairy tale. But since she doesn't remember the last year of her life, you know, she doesn't remember the bad things either. And so within living this life and, you know, dealing with everything that's coming up, she realizes that maybe her new life isn't everything that it seems to be. And so I guess I really just love like also reading romances that really make you think. And so even though this was like, you know, not exactly the best romance I've ever read, it still was just like something that I loved thinking about. Like when I'm reading this, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, what happens if that would happen to you? And do people actually appreciate the lives that they have? You know, all that type of deep stuff. But you can just read it for fun too. You don't have to think of all the deep stuff, but I do really like this book. And then the last one on my list is On the Island by Tracy Garvis Graves. This is the first book that I've read by her, and I read it as a buddy read for Romanceathon in June. And I actually ended up really, really loving it because it's a forbidden romance and like a survival story, which, if you didn't know, I also really love survival stories. So this is about a tutor and a student who are on this airplane and they crash like on this island, and they're the only two left. And the student is only about 17 at the time, and the tutor, I think, is like in her late 20s or early 30s, I believe, but they're on this island for 3 years. While they're on this island, like they start developing feelings for each other, and they actually start, you know, like becoming in a relationship. And again, this is not one of those like gross, icky, taboo romances. Again, this is a real relationship. These people are really in love, and I thought that the ending was really great and perfect. There were definitely some unrealistic parts in this book, but I could easily look over that because it is a story. And I just thought that the actual writing style was really well, and I really loved how the book was broken up into kind of like two parts. So we read about their survival on the island, but then we also read about when they get off of the island and everything that they have to deal with like in the real life situation. So I just really appreciated how it was written, and I thought it was just a really nice, cute read. Like, I don't know, I just really loved the characters, and I really felt for the characters. And so I do love in a romance when I care about who I'm reading about. So that was it. That was the 10 books that have been some of my favorites at the beginning part of this year. I definitely will be making another video at the end of this year talking about my favorites from, you know, June, July, all the way until December. So I'm really excited because I know I already have some of those. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. You can definitely let me know what favorites that you have down in the comments, because I love to just hear from you guys. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and I will see you all in another video. Bye everyone.